Chun Public School, Primary 5, Term 2 Weighted Assessment 2025. Question 1. Find the value of 2 over 9 multiplied by 54. So here we have a fraction multiplied by a whole number. Okay, so 2 over 9 multiplied by 54. So what we can do here is we can cancel the denominator of the fraction with the whole number. So in this case, because 54 is a multiple of 9, we can cancel. So 9 will become 1, and then 54 will become 6. So what we have here is a 2 over 1 multiplied by 6, which is 12. So my answer for question 1 is just 12. Okay, next, express 7 over 20 as a decimal. So 7 over 20 means 7 divided by 20. Okay, in this case, if we can make our denominator into like tens, hundreds, or thousands, please proceed to do that. So in this case, we have 20. We can make our denominator into 100. So 7 over 20 multiplied by 5. Multiplied by 5 to both numerator and denominator, we will get 35 over 100. So 35 over 100 means 35 divided by 100, which you should get 0.35. Okay, so 0.35 is your answer for question 2. Question 3. 31 kg of rambutans were packed equally into 4 bags. What was the mass of the rambutans in each bag? Leave your answer as a mixed number in its simplest form. So 31 kg is the total, and you want to divide into 4 bags. So to find each bag would be 31 divided by 4. So 31 divided by 4 can be expressed as 31 over 4. So how many 4s can you fit inside this 31? You realize that it is actually 28 over 4, which will give me 7 wholes. And what I'm left behind is actually 3 quarters. So 31 over 4 as a mixed number would be 7 and 3 quarters. So that will be my answer, 7 and 3 quarters in each bag for question 3. Okay, next. Joe walked 3 over 5 kilometers, and Joe walked 1/4 kilometers more than Sally. What was the distance Sally walked? Leave your answer as a fraction in its simplest form. So in this case, Joe walked 1/4 kilometers more than Sally. Okay, so this represents a difference. So in this case, we know Joe walked 3/5 kilometers, and we want to find what Sally walked. So in this case, to find how far Sally walked will be just 3/5 minus 1/4. Okay, because Joe is more than Sally. So Joe minus the difference to give me Sally. So in this case, 3/5 and 1/4 are unlike fraction. So in this case, we should make the denominators the same. So the lowest common multiple of 5 and 4 is 20. So for this 3/5 fraction, I multiply by 4 to both numerator and denominator. And then for this 1/4 fraction, I multiply 5. Multiply 5 to both numerator and denominator. So 3 over 5 multiplied by 4 to both numerator and denominator, I will get 12 over 20. And then the next one, the next fraction, I will get 5 over 20. So it's 12 over 20 minus 5 over 20. So 12 minus 5 gives me 7. So 7 over 20 kilometers. Okay, now move on to question 5. Express 2 over 7 as a decimal, correct to 2 decimal place. So when they ask you to correct to 2 decimal place, so it means you need to do your long division until 3 decimal places. Okay, so in this case, we are given 2 divided by 7. Okay, so you realize that 2 cannot be divided by 7. So on top here should be a 0. And then multiply to come down. So 0 times 7 to give you 0. So 2 minus 0 will give me 2. So next you put the decimal place. Then you put the 0. So you bring the next number down, which is the 0. So how many 7s can you fit inside 20? It's just 2. So 2 times 7 is 14. And then 20 minus 14 is 6. Okay, then you put the next 0. You bring it down as well. So the maximum number of 7 you can fit inside 60 is 8. Okay, then 7 times 8 will give me 56. And then 40 minus 56 will give me 4. And then I put one more 0 and bring it down. So the maximum number of 7 you can fit inside 40 is 5. And then 7 times 5 to give you 35. So 40 minus 35, which is remainder of 5. Okay, so you can probably stop here because you can just do a long division until 3 decimal place. So 0.285. Okay, when you round up to 2 decimal place, since the third decimal place is 5, so you can round up. So the number will become 0.29. 0.2 for question 5. Okay, question 6. The diagram shows a triangle PQR. The base of the triangle PQR is PQ. Okay, I'm going to highlight the base of the triangle. So PQ is this line here. So I'm going to highlight it. That's the base. So name the height of the triangle PQR given its base. So you know the formula for area of triangle is half times base times the perpendicular height. So perpendicular height means it must be 90 degrees to the base. So since PQ is the base, if you look at the diagram closely, the perpendicular height would actually be this line UR. Okay, so in this case, our height for this question will be UR. Okay. Next, find the area of the triangle shown below. So first, we need to identify what is the base of the triangle and what is the height of the triangle. So the base and the height must be perpendicular to each other. So you realize that in this triangle, the two lengths that are perpendicular to each other is this 40 centimeters and this 30 centimeters. So to find my area will just be half times my base of 40 times my height of 30. So 40 times 30 will give me 1,200. So half times 1,200. So half of 1,200 will be 600. So the answer is 600 square centimeters for question 7. Okay, question 8. Devi had 3/4 kg of coffee powder. She gave 2/5 of it to her brother. How much coffee powder was she left with? Give your answer as a fraction in its simplest form. So we know the total. It is 3/4 kg of coffee powder. So he gave 2/5 to the brother. So how much, what amount did she give to the brother in this case? We'll just be taking the fraction he gave to the brother, which is 2/5, multiplied by 3/4 kg. Okay. So for this case, when you have a fraction multiplied by a fraction, you can kind of cancel the numerator of one fraction with the denominator of the other fraction. So in this case, we can see that this 2 and this 4 can cancel. So 2 will become 1 and then 4 will become 2. So what we're left with is just a 1 times 3 over a 5 times 2. So 1 times 3 is 3 over 5 times 2, which is 10. So 3 over 10 kg. So this is how much the brother received. And then to find out what fraction, how much coffee powder she was left with. So what she's left with would be the total, which is 3/4 kg. Subtract away how much the brother received, which is 3 over 10 kg. Okay, so once again, they are unlike fractions, so we have to make the denominators the same. So the lowest common multiple of the 4 and 10 would be 20. So in this case, for 3/4, we need to multiply by 5 to both numerator and denominator. And then for 3/10, we need to multiply by 2 to both numerator and denominator. So what we get is a 15 over 20 kg minus away a 6 over 20 kilograms. So 15 over 20 minus 6 over 20 will be 9 over 20. So your answer for this question will be 9/20 kilograms. Okay. Five boys shared four pizzas equally. What fraction of pizza did each boy receive? So the total number of people is five boys, and the total number of pizzas is four pizzas. So how do we split four pizzas among five boys? We just be taking 4 divided by 5. So in this case, will be 4/5. And then you realize you can't simplify this fraction. So this fraction is your answer. So 4/5. Okay. Next, ABCD is a rectangle. Find the area of unshaded triangle DBE. So first we look at the unshaded triangle DBE. We try to identify the base of the triangle. So you must remember that the base will always be one side of the triangle. So in this case, if we look at our triangle, we realize that the only base that we can find will probably be this DE, this line DE. Okay, so how can we find this line DE? So we know the length and the breadth of the rectangle. So in this case, this DC portion here, this is also the breadth of my rectangle, which is 8 centimeters. And since we know EC is 5 centimeters, we can find DE, the length of DE, which is 8 centimeters minus 5 centimeters. This will give me 3 centimeters for the EE. And that is the base of my triangle. Okay, then the height will be the perpendicular height, so 90 degrees. So the height would probably be this DC, sorry, not DC, BC. So in this case, the height is the length of the rectangle, which is 10 centimeters. So we want to find the triangle DBE, would just be taking half times my base of 3 centimeters times my perpendicular height of 10 centimeters. So half times 3 times 10. So 3 times 10 is 30. Half of 30 is 15. Okay, so the answer for this question will be the unshaded triangle is 15 squared centimeters. That will be for question 10. Okay, I'm going to move on to question 11. So for question 11, Becky and Tim had the same number of beads at first. So after Becky gave away 1/3 of her beads and Tim gave away half of his beads, Tim had 138 beads, fewer beads than Becky. How many beads did Becky have at first? So in this case, we are given that they both had the same number of beads at first. So we can represent this in a comparison model. So Becky and Tim. So we draw the equal model for both cases, for both Becky and Tim. Okay, so I'll redraw this Tim. Okay, try to make sure that they're equal. And in this case, so Becky gave away 1/3 of her beads. So in this case, for Becky, we can cut the model into 3 parts. So Becky can cut into 3, and then she gave one box away or one part away. So I can shade away one part because we gave it away. And then for Tim, he gave half of his beads away. So for Tim's model, you can cut into 2 parts and then give one part away. So I'm going to shade it away. Okay. So first, you know that because they have the same number of beads at first. So how can we make Becky and Tim into equal units? So now Becky is three parts and Tim is 2 parts. So in order to make them the same, we have to find the lowest common multiple of 3 and 2, which is 6. So Becky is 3 boxes, or 3 parts. To make it 6, we just multiply by 2. So each box or each part will represent 2 units each. Whereas for Tim, he is 2 parts, so we want to make it into 6. So we multiply by 3. So each part will be 3 units. Okay. Next, we read the question again. Tim had 138 beads, fewer beats than Becky. Okay, so once again, this 138 beats fewer represents a difference. Okay, so where will my difference be in the model? So let me draw it out. So you can observe from Becky and Tim, the difference is actually this portion here. Okay, which is actually 138. Okay, in this case, we know our difference is 138. So we find the difference in terms of the units. So what Becky had left is actually 4 units, and what Tim had left is 3 units. So the difference in the units would be 4 units minus 3 units, which is 1 unit. And in this case, my 1 unit will represent my difference of 138. So we want to find how many beats did Becky have at first. So in this case, Becky at first would just be the whole box here. So Becky at first is 6 units. So to find 6 unit, we just take 6 times what is 1 unit, which is 138. So if you do your column working out, you will get the answer of 828 beats for Becky at first. Okay, that will be your answer for question 11. Okay, next, question 12. The figure below is made up of 2 right angle triangles, XYZ and XWQ. So XY equals to XZ and XW equals to XQ. Then YZ is 7 centimeters and YQ is 9 centimeters. Find the area of the shaded part. So based off the information that we're given, okay, we're actually given 2 right angle triangles and the X, Y, and XZ are equal to each other. So means that the smaller right angle triangle is actually an isosceles triangle. Okay? And then XW equals to XQ. So this is for the bigger right angle triangle. So the XW, XQ equals to each other. It means that it is also a isosceles triangle. So what I want you to visualize is that if you have isosceles triangle and it is a right angle at the middle, so right angle at here, so you can actually make use of four right angle triangles to kind of form a square. So let me draw it out for you. So in this case, I'm going to draw it out for you and how it would look like. Okay. Okay. So you realize that it is actually a bigger square with a side of 9 centimeters. And then inside there is actually a smaller square with side 7 centimeters. Okay. And then the figure is actually made up of 4 of the shaded parts. So 1 part, 2 parts. This is the 3rd part. And this will be the 4th part. So how can we find one shaded part? So if we can take the area of the big square minus the area of the small square, that will give me 4 of the shaded parts. Then we can find one shaded part. Okay, from there. So in this case, to find the area of the big square, would be taking 9 times 9, which is 81. And then the small square would be taking 7 times 7, which is 49. So to find the area of the 4 shaded would be to take 81 minus 49, which is 32. So one shaded will be 32 divided by 4, which is 8 squared centimeters. So the answer for this question will be 8 squared centimeters. Okay, I'll move on to question 13. The figure below is made up of two overlapping triangles, ABC and BDC. We're given the area of the whole figure, ABCDE is 93 squared centimeters. Find the area of the shaded triangle ABE. So if you look at this figure, the whole figure, you can actually see that it's actually made up of three smaller triangles. Okay. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to label each of this small triangle. So here is one triangle X, which is the shaded triangle, what we want to find. Okay. Then there's another triangle here, I call it Y, and the last triangle, which is the overlapping portion of the two triangles, it is part C. I'm going to label it part C. So find the area of the shaded triangle ABE. Okay, in this case, we know that the whole figure is 93 square centimeters. So in this case, the area of my X plus Y plus C will be equals to 93. Okay, so we want to find part X, okay, and we know the whole, which is X plus Y plus Z. So if we are able to find what is part Y and part Z, we can just minus off from our whole to give us part X. So in this case, part Y plus Z actually forms a triangle here. So I'm going to highlight this triangle here. Okay. And in this case, you realize that the base of the triangle is this BC portion, and the height of the triangle will be this DF portion. Okay. So we can find the area of Y plus Z, which would be taking half times my base of 10 centimeters times my height of 15. So 10 times 15 is 150. Half of 150 is 75. So area of Y plus Z will give me 75. Then as I was mentioning previously, to find the area of X, which is our shaded triangle, so area of X will be just taking your whole, which is 93, minus part Y and part Z, minus 75. Okay, so 93 minus 75 would be 18. So the answer for this question will be 18 squared centimeters. Okay, next. Okay. Okay, for question 14, Mr. Liang had 32 liters of water. He used 3 out of 8 of it for his laundry and 7 out of 10 of the remaining water for cooking. What fraction of the water did he use for cooking? Okay, so first, how much did he use for laundry? So his laundry would just be 3 over 8. This is the fraction he used for laundry. And what fraction will he be left with after he used 3 over 8 for the laundry? So what he remained would be 1 whole minus how much he used for laundry, which is 3 over 8. Okay, this will give me 5 out of 8. So what he remained is 5 out of 8. And in this case, he used 7 out of 10 of the remaining water for cooking. So it means he used the 7 out of 10 of 5 over 8 for cooking. So to find the fraction of water that he used for cooking, so in this case, of means to multiply. So what fraction of the water did he use for cooking? In this case, for cooking, we would take what remain is 5 over 8 multiplied by 7 over 10. Okay, then once again, you see you can cancel the numerator and denominator of the fractions, of the different fractions. So in this case, the 5 and 10 you can cancel. So 5 will become 1 and the 10 will become 2. So what we are left with is a 1 times 7 over 8 times 2, which is a 7 over 16. So in this case, the fraction of water used for cooking would be 7 over 16. Okay. For part B, how much water was Mr. Liang left with? So how do we find what fraction of water is he left with? So to find the fraction of water that he's left with, fraction he left with would be just taking what he remained, which is the 5/8, subtract away with how much he used for cooking, which is this 7/16. Once again, they are unlike fractions, so we can make the denominators the same. So in this case, the LCM of our denominators, 8 and 16, would be 16. So for this 5/8, we need to multiply by 2 to both numerator and denominator. We will get 10/16 minus 7/16, which will give me 3/16. So this is the fraction of water that he's left with. So how much water, in this case, how much water means the amount of water. So to find the amount of water, we will just take what he originally had, which is the 32 liters, multiplied by the fraction left, which is 3/16. Okay. So in this case, we have a whole number multiplied by a fraction. Once again, you can cancel the denominator of the fraction with the whole number. So in this case, 16 and 32 you can cancel, okay? Because 32 is a multiple of 16. So 16 will become 1 and then 32 will become 2. So essentially what we have left is just a 2 times 3/1, which is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. So in this case, our answer for this question, how much water was Mr. Liang left with, would just be 6 liters. Okay? We have come to the end of the paper. Thank you.